Welcome to Breakdown, October 16th, 2024. JJ, we're going to talk SEC Big Ten football.
Indeed, we are.
JJ, something is different.
Well, what's different?
I think it's you. You glowing.
Well,
Let me see this.
this is the 100.
What's that on your ring? What's that on your finger? You've been jumping the broom. Congratulations, my brother, my son. You jumped the broom.
Well, yeah. I appreciate that.
Okay,
Thanks for showing up.
last Saturday,
Yeah.
my man is different. A married man.
I'm half a person now.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks. It
Let's
was
get back to-
beautiful event.
Indeed. Very, very beautiful. I enjoyed it immensely.
Okay.
But SEC Big Ten.
SEC big time.
Last week was pretty exciting, man.
Yeah, man.
In a lot of ways, in addition to your wedding, there was more exciting things going on.
Yeah, unfortunately, my wedding did take place Saturday, and I didn't get the opportunity to watch any of those games live. I did go back and watch one of these games, but it definitely was a weekend. I mean, that was because the weekend before was, all the upsets, and it was like a great weekend. It was the unexpected weekend, and this was the weekend where everybody was kind of expecting it. Some great games, 2 versus 3, Ohio State, Oregon, and that delivered.
It did.
South Carolina, Alabama definitely delivered.
And people were not expecting it to be a game.
But even less people were probably expecting Tennessee and Florida to be a game.
That's true. JJ, there were 2 overtime games last week in the SEC and 1 in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Overtime ruled.
They did.
But who are we going to start with as we review last week's game? You want to hit the SEC first or the Big Ten first? Let's save the Ohio State, Oregon last. Let's go to the SEC.
SEC it is.
Let's go. South Carolina was at Alabama. Alabama was a 21.5-point favorite in that game.
They were.
They won 27-25.
Yeah, I mean, that's the type of game that I would have put.
That was a get-right game, according to you, because Alabama had lost the previous week to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, and under normal circumstances, I would have picked South Carolina to cover, just because I love their defensive line. I just think it can create the most chaos and havoc of any defensive line in the conference. But I just figured with Alabama losing to Vandy for the first time in so long, and Vandy putting up 40 points for the first time since 1906, I just would have assumed that they would have gotten right. But this is a different Alabama game. I mean, at Alabama team. I guess Nick Saban, after losses, his record wasn't actually that great.
I haven't a clue.
So, well, definitely covering. He didn't cover very frequently. So
I'm going to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Should Bama fans be concerned?
Well, Bama fans will be concerned. I know that.
Okay.
Whether they should be or not, it doesn't matter. But Paul Feinbaum will be getting his calls of concerned Alabama residents.
Alabama did win.
Alabama did win.
So at the end of the year, they're not going to look back and say they barely won this game. They're going to say they won X number of games and they lost X number of games. So they did get the win.
Yeah, by hook or by crook. I mean,
I still think Alabama has problems with their defense.
Yeah, I mean, this time last year, they were squeaking by South Florida. So, I mean, there are no perfect teams. And I think the transfer portal, has just reinforced that. I think it's distributed talent a little differently. But, yeah, they definitely have some issues that they have to deal with.
Okay, JJ. Let's go to another game in the SEC.
Let's move on.
Florida was at Tennessee. Tennessee was a 14-point favorite in that game.
At home.
At home.
A get-right game.
That game, because Tennessee had lost the previous week to Arkansas. So that game went into overtime, JJ.
It did go into overtime.
But let me ask you this. Should it have gone into overtime? Because, go ahead.
Well, I wasn't watching this game live, but after going back and watching the highlights, I just don't understand why when you have you're in that situation, I don't understand why they made the decision to
go for one instead of going for
I
two?
would have ended the game in regulation, hopefully with a win, but regardless, I would have ended the game in regulation.
Well, this is my thinking. Ever since I was a kid, it was always in a situation like that when you score at the end of the game. They scored with 29 seconds left to go in the game. When you scored that late in the game, and an extra point will tie it, and a 2-point conversion will win it. The rule of thumb, JJ, since I was an itty bitty boy, no bigger than that, was always, if you are the visiting team, go for the win. If you are the home team, go for the tie.
Yeah.
Florida was the visiting team. They decided to go for the tie.
They did.
What happened in overtime?
Well, Tennessee had a walk-off touchdown.
They did.
And they left that game 23-17.
So does that make Napier's seat even hotter, Coach Napier?
This game honestly would not matter. He's getting fired at the end of the season. I think they're going to give him till the end of the season.
Okay.
But he's getting let go.
Well, JJ, let's talk about another game.
Mm-hmm.
The first time these two teams ever played in the SEC. Played in Dallas.
Yep.
The Red River rivalry. Texas and Oklahoma.
Texas and Oklahoma.
Texas was a 17-point favorite.
Yeah.
Why did Oklahoma not get the email that there was a game Saturday? Why didn't they show?
Yeah, I think that's just Oklahoma under new management. I like their head coach as a defensive coordinator, but the Peter principle. I think that we might be seeing.
A lot of people know what the Peter principle is. I know what it is, though. But you want to explain the Peter principle?
I think he might have been promoted beyond his competency.
Yeah.
So I think that we might be witnessing that, because outside of that one magical year last year, Dylan Gabriel year, Oklahoma has struggled, and that wasn't that magical. They went 10-3, but they beat Texas, which is important, and I don't see them doing that too well. Too many times. 2 years ago they lost 49-0 to Texas.
Okay. Question to you.
Yeah.
Is Texas head and shoulders above everyone else in the SEC?
I would not say that they're head and shoulders above anyone in the SEC.
Okay.
We'll talk about that when we preview
this coming week's
game. But I think that I think that there was a reason a lot of people picked them to win the SEC. I originally did, and I waffled back, and I think I might have went with Tennessee after Tennessee went off to a hot start. But I think that Texas has talent, man. They have talent on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, they do. Texas won that game 34-3.
And they could have won. And they could have won by more if they wanted.
Man, Oklahoma has not came to show for some home games. JJ, let's talk about another game that went into overtime. Ole Miss at LSU.
Yeah.
LSU won that game in overtime, 29-26.
Yeah, they did.
The only time LSU had a lead in this game, JJ, was on the very last play of the game. That's the only time they had a lead. Ole Miss led the whole game through, or else it was tied.
Yeah. I think, I can remember some memorable games like that in the past. Was it Michigan State?
I remember that, the punt.
Yeah, that was a very memorable way to change that. But yeah,
JJ, LSU got fined $250,000 for storming the field after that game.
It's a horrible look if you're LSU. You've won championships with so many different head coaches. Ole Miss can do that against LSU. Ole Miss hasn't won anything since before desegregation. They might not have won anything ever. I don't know, but
they won baseball championship.
They're a baseball school. But LSU, you're LSU. Show some respect. Act like you've been there before.
I was going to ask you how did that look, but it surprised me that LSU fans would have stormed the field with a victory over Ole Miss. I wouldn't have
even
thought,
a ranked Ole Miss, a top 15 or 20 Ole Miss or whatever. Yeah.
On LSU, on their drive to tie the game, JJ, they converted 2 fourth downs to get it done.
Yeah.
Ole Miss led the whole game. Did the better team win that game? That's my question.
LSU was at home. They had to take it to overtime to win, and they weren't leading.
They were a 4-point underdog at home.
Yeah, they were 4-point underdog at home,
Yeah.
and they did not lead to the last second of the game. So, that would suggest that the better team did not win. But I think the better
win
coach
is a
team
win.
won.
A win is a win. So your last game in the season, I want to preview. Review rather. Vandy at Kentucky. Kentucky was a 12.5-point favorite in that game.
Yeah.
They barely scored 12.5 points, period. They scored 13 points. They lost. Vandy won 20-13, and Kentucky was a 12.5-point favorite in that game. Did the better team win, JJ?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Vandy's definitely a better team than Kentucky currently because they do have a better college quarterback. I do think that goes a long way in college football. I also think that they're better coached. I think Mark Stoops has some good qualities. I think he's, the best coach in Kentucky history since Bear Bryant.
Yeah.
But I do think that, he is similar to John Calipari, their basketball coach. He was a little bit stuck in his ways, and he is who he is. And he, is easy to scheme against and go against in certain respects. I mean, Georgia, struggles with him. But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
But they struggle to throw the ball.
Yeah, definitely Georgia struggled with it. Vandy is 4-2. Their over and under to start the year was
3 wins,
2.5.
2.5 wins.
Last year they won 2 games.
Yeah.
They were 2 and get. They're already 4-2.
The transfer portal.
And Kentucky is 3-3.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk
the perennial Southern dwellers of the SEC.
Vandy, and look at them now.
Look at them now. Well, Vandy and Kentucky, those are the 2 worst programs. Is Kentucky or Mississippi State? Which one's the...
That's a good question.
Those are the 2 worst programs.
I think historically I would go with Mississippi State. In the last 10... historically I think I would go with Kentucky as being one of the worst. But in the last 10... You know what, JJ? I'll take that back. They Kentucky and Mississippi State, I don't know.
Flip a coin.
They're mirror images of each other, if you ask me.
Fair enough.
I don't know what the numbers, the stats.
So 2 of the 3 worst teams.
Okay.
How we'll put it like that.
We will agree with that. Can we go to the Big Ten and look at last week's Big Ten game?
Let's move on to the Big Ten.
Let's look at the biggie. Or you want to say the biggie for last as we review?
Well, you mentioned it. Let's talk about Oregon, Ohio State.
Oregon was a 3.5-point underdog at home against Ohio State.
And Autzen Stadium at night. You would think Vegas would know better. I mean, you would think.
JJ, you said you watched that game. Did the better team win that game?
I don't know. I think both of these coaches struggle in big games. One of them had to win it. But I do think that the more talented team did not win. I think Ohio State has more talent than Oregon.
And JJ,
What do you think?
I think they will play each other again in Indianapolis in December.
You think so?
I think so. Penn State may have something to say about that.
Indiana might have something to say about that.
Nah, I heard what you're saying.
Okay.
But for me,
Indiana might lose one game. Okay.
Ohio State entered that game, JJ, the number 1 scoring offense, or number 1 scoring defense and total defense. They entered that game. They gave up 31 points. That team did. They had no sacks in that game.
Yeah.
They had no sacks. Ohio State was that close to having the biggest road win of the season this year.
Yeah.
With 6 seconds to go, the clock ran out on them. They were inside field goal range easily. I got a question for you on that game, though. The very end.
Well,
Go ahead.
wasn't the biggest road win Vandy over Alabama?
Or was that Vandy?
Oh, yeah.
They stormed the field.
You're
Took
right.
the goalpost with them.
Sorry, I got married. Sorry, I've been busy.
Okay, JJ.
Yeah.
Oregon had eight, if I can count correctly, 8 plays of 20 yards or more. So that's surprising.
That's a lot of explosive plays.
It is.
That is surprising considering Ohio State secondary. It was renowned as supposed to be one of the best in the country. Before adding Caleb Downs,
That's true.
Alabama, the transfer from Alabama, the safety, just their corners are supposed to be locked down. So for them to have that many explosive plays, and for Dylan Gabriel to, have his way dinking and dunking and then, going over top as well, the way that he did, that would be disconcerting if you're an Ohio State fan.
Yeah.
I
It's going to
didn't
be
realize it was
it's going to be
20.
interesting. It was 20.
Yeah.
8 plays of 20 or more yards. But JJ, a very, very, very interesting thing happened in that game. The next to the last play of the game, Oregon intentionally had 12 players on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Because they knew that it's only a 5-yard penalty if they get penalized for it.
Yeah.
Or if they don't get penalized for it, they get to play with 12 against 11.
Yeah.
And a 5-yard penalty wouldn't have hurted them that much. It was like 10 seconds to go in the game at that point in time. Back in the day when I was a kid, JJ, if you played with 12, it was considered unsportsmanlike and it was a 15-yard penalty. Now it's just illegal substitution when you play with 12. Is that right? Is that fair?
Well, I think I'm not sure if it was the Big Ten or the NCAA, but somebody already came out and announced that they're looking into changing that.
The NCAA is.
So that should probably tell you if that if it's fair or not. If less than a week after.
They're looking to make an in-season change to the rules. So we'll see if that actually happened. But was that a brilliant move by the coach?
Yeah, absolutely. It reminded me of Mike Vrabel, some of the things that he did when he was the Tennessee Titans coach. He took advantage of some encroachment penalties to bleed time off the clock, and if the punishment, if the penalty, it's kind of like when when Purdue Pharma got penalized, I think like $70 million for misleading something in a drug that netted them $7 billion. If you're gonna fine them $70 million for $7 billion, you'll take that fine. The penalty has to be a deterrent.
So I thought it's great, man. You're gonna play 12, and they double covered a receiver. One side of the field was basically whacked off because they had 12 guys playing. It wasn't 12 guys on the field. It was 12 guys playing, and the worst thing that could happen is, they beat you with 11 guys and you have 12. Else you get a 5-yard penalty, and you get to run 4 or 5 seconds off the clock. Yeah. And those seconds were critical at that point in time. So I thought it was great. So let's move on, though.
Absolutely.
Penn State at USC. Oh, have the mighty have fallen. That was supposed to be a big game going into the season, JJ.
Yeah.
It turned out to be a good game. Went into overtime.
Yeah, it was a really good game.
But USC won.
No, it didn't.
I'm sorry. USC lost.
Yeah.
USC lost. And that's the third loss, JJ.
Yeah, this seems to be a pattern for Lincoln Riley down there.
Man, I don't know what to say. But JJ, I want to point out something. And you tell me whether or not it's a coincidence or if there's something behind it. When you travel from the West Coast to the East Coast time zone, or from the East Coast to the West Coast time zone, now that the Big Ten have teams on the East Coast time zone and the West Coast time, they played 7 games.
Okay.
In those 7 games, what's the record for the traveling team?
Well, you tell me.
1-6.
1-6.
The traveling team won 1, and that 1 win was the Penn State win over USC in overtime. Is it coincidental that the record is 1-6, or is there something to this multiple time zone travel thing?
I think it's too small of a sample size to determine if there's more to it. I do think, for the most part, it depends. Like, how many of those teams were favored, going in versus, So I think it's too small of a sample size at this point. But I also do think that it is devastating to travel, specifically from west to east, is what they always say.
You're going through 3 time zones. You're going to 3 time zones. I absolutely, positively think that it's an issue if the other team is not going through those 3 time zones.
Well, you would think that the Big Ten would be more used to it, just with the fact that they did that for the Rose Bowl. They always flew west. USC, they never had to fly east, and they have to now. So I do want to see how that's going to impact them. But I'm more interested to see how the USCs and the Oregons of the world feel about going to Happy Valley in December, or Ann Arbor in November, or That is what I'm really looking forward to, is how they handle weather.
Okay, very good. JJ, we've been on this a long time. Let's just really quickly try to speed up our thing. Wisconsin 42, Rutgers 7. That was a 1-point game, JJ. Wisconsin was a 1-point underdog, and they won 42-7.
Yeah, they exposed Rutgers.
Yeah. Washington was at Iowa. Iowa was a 3-point favorite. They won 16-40.
To lose to 24 points to Iowa means that Iowa has to score at least 24 points, which is embarrassing in of itself. The fact that they scored 16 points more than that too is
They scored 7. Was it 7 the week before against Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean, that was Ohio State, but still, that is an offensive explosion. I think there was some special teams or defensive touchdowns or something. I didn't get an opportunity to watch. I just watched the highlights, so I can't really recall.
Even though Washington only flew through 2 time zones, they went from Pacific to Mountain to Central. I'm thinking this time zone is going to mess up some Big Ten schools. But that's just my thinking. That's not my thinking. Let's get into this coming week's game.
Okay, let's transition to Week 8 preview.
Let's stay in the Big Ten.
Okay.
The Wolverines, these are top 25 teams.
Okay.
Michigan 4-2 against 5-1 Illinois.
The only top 25 matchup in the Big Ten this week.
Illinois is at home. They're a 1-point underdog.
1-point underdog.
Can you buy that?
That's a good question. Illinois a 1-point underdog. Illinois has looked up and down to me. They needed overtime to beat Purdue last week, and they gave up 49 points to Purdue.
Purdue is really, really bad.
At home. So, but that might have been a look-ahead spot. They might have just not have
You'd be right. You could be
wanted
right.
to put anything on tape for Michigan. That is very much true. It's a possibility. I don't know. I would stay away.
JJ, in the last 3 games, Michigan's quarterback has not thrown for 100 yards.
Yeah, I think that might change this week. They did say that they're going to go with Jack Tuttle, I believe. I do think he is their best potential option. But I do think that they have to mix in some Alex Orji plays.
Okay.
They just have to hodgepodge it to get by. But I do think Michigan will win, but I wouldn't take Michigan to win. I would stay away.
Yeah, 1 point. Man, Brent Bielema has started to talk a little bit. When he starts talking, his team seems to go south. He hasn't talked, excessively, but he is talking a little bit. So being at home against Michigan, I think the fan will really, really love to get a win against Michigan, and they're going to be rowdy, and I think that home court advantage is going to help. I could not give 1 point if Michigan's on the road. That's me. Nebraska and Indiana, JJ. Undefeated Indiana hosting 5-1 Nebraska. Now, to me, that's the game in the Big Ten that I would most look forward to. What's your take on that game?
Man, this could be a magical year for Indiana. I remember saying when we were discussing in the previous season, talking about their schedule, things could really open up for them. They could do a lot of good things, but
they got Nebraska at home.
Yeah, after the things that they did to Maryland, the beatdown that they did, Indiana looks like they could go for something very, very special this year. I think that this might be. I think the students might know. I think the stadium might be pretty full. I think this is their time.
So
I think Nebraska.
We both would give those 6 points.
6 is a lot of points.
It is a lot of points.
It is a lot of points for a school like Indiana that's not used to being in that position.
Very much true.
I think Indiana wins. I don't know if they win by 6. I don't know. I would probably give the points if I had to, but that's just another one I would stay away from.
Okay. Looking at Indiana's schedule, to me, they're only, as you would call, guaranteed loss, and I say nothing's guaranteed, it's the Ohio State game.
Absolutely. They could win every other game. And I think that they're going to be favored in most of every other game.
They play Ohio State at Ohio State. Michigan has to come there. They come to Michigan State and they play Purdue and they play this. They host Washington, Nebraska. I think they could well, not easily, but I think it's possible that they could go 11-1.
I think they can too.
Okay. What about the other game, JJ, in the Big Ten? Iowa, a 4-2 team, come to Michigan State, a 3-3 team. Michigan State is a 6-point underdog.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to get for Iowa to give up that many points just because they don't score a lot on offense. But, I understand it. Childs likes to give the ball away. And
yeah, he
that
does.
he can fumble and throw interceptions.
I think he has 3 fumbles and 8 interceptions.
I knew he was leading the country in interceptions at one point.
And they had a bye last week.
Yeah, so I would probably take Iowa to cover those 6. What say you?
I hate to say that. I think Iowa's 6 points better than Michigan State, but I wouldn't take them because I just wouldn't bet against Michigan State in that Iowa game.
Yeah.
Okay, JJ, really quickly, USC and Maryland.
Okay.
I don't really think that's a big game, but USC is a 7.5 point underdog.
Both these coaches need it.
Yeah, they do. Who needed more? They're both 3-3, I believe.
That's a good question. Who needs it more? I think Mike Lashley needs it more for Maryland.
Yeah.
Because I think if Lincoln Riley doesn't work out in college, he has the NFL as a landing spot for whatever reason. I don't know why it seems to work that way, but the Peter principle does not apply once it comes to that for whatever reason. So.
Yeah, and I think Maryland has not showed up in some games that they were picked to be more competitive in.
Yeah, I think sometimes when you don't have the full support of the fans and the donors, things can turn on you. It's hard to regain that support. So I would say Mike Lashley needs it more.
So I got 3 games in the SEC I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
Alabama 5-1 goes to Tennessee 5-1. Who's favored in that game?
Oof. I would imagine Tennessee would be favored.
Alabama is a 2.5 point favorite in that game. Both teams coming off the last 2 weeks, they underperformed. 2 weeks ago, both teams lost, and last week, both teams
looked really bad.
Is this an elimination game for these teams as far as college playoffs goes?
Absolutely not. I think a 2-loss team can make it to the college football playoff. A 3-loss team, I don't think will. But if you lose this game, you better hold on tight for the rest of your game. But this is a very important game. It's a pivotal game for both teams.
Who's the better team, JJ? If they play on a neutral field, who's the better team?
Neutral, that's interesting. I would say Alabama might be worth 2.5 points on a neutral. At Tennessee, I think Tennessee is going to win. But on a neutral, I think Alabama is probably a better team.
Who has the better quarterback?
That's a great question. I would say Alabama has a quarterback that has shown more, has done more, but they both have flaws.
I'm going to go with the better quarterback.
Okay.
I would give those 2.5 points.
All right.
I think
Neyland Stadium is one of the unique ones to me. I think that their
agree.
home field advantage is such that you can't just pick the better quarterback. But
Florida took them to overtime at Neyland Stadium.
Florida did. And Vandy beat Alabama. So, anyway.
Okay. JJ, this is the big game in the SEC.
Okay.
We're going to say the best for last, but we're going to give you the biggest one right now because we got 2 more to go. The biggest, Georgia 5-1 at 6-0 Texas. Who's the favorite in that one?
Texas has to be favored.
They're number 1 in the country. They're 3.5 point favorite. You buying those 3.5 points? You taking them? You giving them?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think Georgia could win.
So, JJ.
But I think Texas is the better team.
You're telling me that Texas will become the first team in 4 years in the SEC not named Alabama to beat Georgia? Alabama has not lost to an SEC team not named Alabama in 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I do think that Texas will be the first team in 4 years to do that. I think Vegas thinks that. I think Quinn Ewers thinks that. Most importantly,
You know something?
They do have a Alabama player, Isaiah Bond, the former
receiver.
Alabama.
Yeah, he caught the big pass last year against
He's used
Auburn.
to beating Georgia. I think he has a couple of wins in his belt.
You know what? I do think Texas is the better team. 3.5 point. 3 I would be comfortable with. 3.5 I struggle with. I don't know, but like I say, man, on any given Saturday is who knows. But JJ, let's go to the really big game
Okay.
in the SC, and this is our last game. LS who? Or is it LSU? LS who? LSU. Yeah, it's LSU. LSU is going to Fayetteville, JJ. A 5-1 LSU going in to play a 4-2 Arkansas team. Arkansas actually, an argument could be made that they could be 6-0. They are a 3-point underdog, JJ. How you like that spread? What does Arkansas have to do to win that game?
Well, first off, who's playing quarterback for Arkansas?
They were supposed to announce on Thursday if Green was going to play. They say they think he's going to play, but the official announcement will come tomorrow.
All right. I mean, well, what they have to do, no matter if it's
And
Malachi Singleton or Taylor Green,
that's a big difference.
there's a big difference. But they have to make LSU respect the run and the pass, which means, Armstrong, Tesla, like they're gonna have to be involved in the short passing game, the deep passing game. They're gonna have to get them involved in creative ways and a lot different.
The reason I think Arkansas will win will be because of Arkansas's running game
Okay.
and their passing game. Arkansas will put some numbers up against LSU.
They'll have to, I think.
I think they will. LSU, I like their quarterback. What's his name? Messner or
Garrett Nussmeier.
Nesmeyer.
Yeah.
I like him a lot. He's the real deal.
Yeah. Some people
but-
think he'll
but
be the first quarterback taken in the draft if he comes out.
He has impressed me. I will say that. But their defense has not impressed me.
Yeah.
I don't think their defense. So, WPS. What's this you wearing, married man?
You know what time it is. Y'all all know what time it is.
Tell me.
Who they?
I hear you. It's time for us to say adios. Let's get out of here, Jay. Bam. Okay.